I'm delighted to be speaking to you all today as part of the Ground Source Heat Pump Association's annual conference. I'm really sorry that I can't be there to attend in person, but I'm grateful to the event organisers for giving me the chance to talk a bit about the vital role that reducing emissions from our homes and buildings has in helping to end Scotland's contribution to climate change. As you'll probably know, our climate change legislation sets legally binding targets for us to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2045, with interim targets of a 75% reduction by 2030 and 90% by 2040. This is a monumental but absolutely necessary task. We can and must make very significant progress toward reducing these emissions over the course of this decade and then go on to reach net zero by 2045. Reaching net zero in our homes and workplaces is going to be immensely challenging. It'll require action from all of us right across society and the economy. Now, energy efficiency, of course, has already been a major and growing focus for many years, and it'll continue to play a vital role. From the 1970s oil shocks through to the current cost crisis, we've known for a long time that better insulated homes and buildings is a good bet, even if regrettably policy, regulation and funding haven't in the past matched up. But even if we want to accelerate that work, we know also that energy efficiency on its own is no longer enough. We also need a systematic switch to zero emissions heating if we're going to meet those climate targets. Achieving this ambition is going to mean a significant acceleration in the rate at which zero emission heat systems are installed. In recent years, we've seen a few thousand such systems installed in homes each year in Scotland. We need this figure to grow rapidly so that by the latter part of the decade, we're installing around 200,000 a year. Now, to achieve that scale, we need champions within industry to grasp this challenge and drive forward the growth in skills, quality assurance, and consumer engagement that's needed across the supply chain. The Scottish Government stands ready to support industry on this journey. And over the coming months, we'll publish a new supply chain delivery plan that sets out a broad system of support for skills and supply chain development. There are many opportunities for those in industry who move early. We estimate that well over 16,000 new good quality jobs could be supported across the economy by 2030 from doing this work. And that'll involve some £33 billion worth of spending across the economy by 2045. Our Heat in Buildings strategy that was published in October last year provides the pathway for the heat transition, and it outlines how the Scottish Government and our public sector partners will support that journey. The strategy sets out that by 2030 we want to see a large majority of homes achieving a level of energy efficiency at least equivalent to EPC C, with all homes meeting that standard by 2033, wherever feasible and cost effective. And it also sets out that by 2030 we need over 1 million homes and the equivalent of 50,000 non-domestic buildings to convert from fossil fuels to zero emissions heat. That's a huge transition. It'll affect communities, businesses and households right across Scotland. We know that unlocking investment in this sector has to start with clear demand for its products and services. That's why alongside the support of industry, we need anchor consumers in the market to help us build trust and confidence. That's why we've committed to investing at least £1.8 billion throughout the course of this current session of Parliament to allow for the acceleration of energy efficiency upgrades and switching to zero emission heating. Through our Home Energy Scotland service, we offer free loans and cashback for domestic consumers to install household energy efficiency measures and renewable heating systems, including heat pumps. And the recently published programme for government included a commitment to replace that cashback element of the fund to offer a standalone grant. The standalone grant will retain the focus on energy efficiency measures and zero emissions heating, and it will be launched during this financial year. We also recognise the growing importance of the heat network, its sector in Scotland as well. It's going to be an important and integral part of the solution to cutting emissions from our homes and buildings. In July this year, I had the pleasure of visiting Saughton Park and Gardens in Edinburgh, and I was given the chance to see two of their own ground source heat pumps in operation, one of which was using shallow ground loops running underneath a nearby football pitch, and the other picking up heat from 12 150-metre boreholes. The 72 tonnes of CO2 emissions that they've saved each year, and the integration of the ground source heat pumps into the local environment, shows that this technology has the ability to provide communities with cheap green heat and play a key role in meeting our legally binding emission targets. Last year, the Scottish Parliament passed the Heat Networks Act, creating for the first time in Scotland and the UK legislation to support and encourage the development of communal and district heat networks. The Act sets statutory targets for the amount of heat to be supplied by heat networks, aiming for 2.6 terawatt hours of output by 2027 and 6 terawatt hours by 2030, representing 3% and then 8% of current heat demand. These bold targets are broadly equivalent to 120,000 average gas-using homes being connected to heat networks by 2027 and 400,000 by 2030. We're taking a number of actions to drive this growth, including significant investment through the £300 million Heat Network Fund that will help to kickstart the supply chain in Scotland. And in March 2022, we published the Heat Networks Delivery Plan, which outlines how we'll support the increased use of heat networks in Scotland. Within that delivery plan, we propose that licence holders who operate existing networks in Scotland will be required to prepare and then implement individual heat network decarbonisation plans. These plans will set out the journey that each existing network will take to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in line with our targets. Now, while the current legislation doesn't prescribe specific technologies relating to heat networks, the delivery plan states that from the time the legislative framework is in place in 2024, we will require the vast majority of heat from new networks and extensions of existing ones to be provided by low and zero emission heat sources, such as ground source heat pumps. In April this year, we published a report that outlines potential heat network zones. This provides new insight into where and how groups of buildings could be connected to shared energy sources, making them greener and more efficient to run. This is a space where ground and air and water source heat pumps have the potential to play a very significant role. Through the Energy Saving Trust, we also offer support to district heating projects through a district heating loan fund, and that offers low interest loans to local authorities, social landlords and SMEs. The loan fund provides low interest capital loans of up to £1 million for both low carbon and renewable technologies for up to 100% of project costs. Through this scheme, we've sought to provide help toward the large implementation costs of district heating projects, as well as providing technical support and advice. And to date, we've distributed £20 million across 53 different projects in Scotland, providing affordable warmth to households, creating local employment and reducing costs for businesses and reducing carbon emissions. So there is a lot going on. But time and time again, industry and suppliers tell me that they need stability and certainty to invest in products and workforce. That's why we're also developing a framework of regulations coming into effectiveness from 2025. That will set clear standards for property owners across all tenures and building types on the heating systems and energy efficiency in their buildings. This framework of regulations will give confidence to the supply chain and provide the certainty that's necessary to secure investment. By regulating, we'll stimulate the market for zero emission heating systems, in turn creating good quality green jobs and driving down costs for households. By coordinating with industry, we're developing an understanding of how the supply chain needs to grow to support our ambitious targets. It's not going to be easy, but our investments through the course of this session of Parliament are helping to kickstart the industrial transformation and growth that's required across the heat in buildings sector. The importance of the work that we're doing to reach net zero by 2045 is made ever more clear by the upcoming COP27 in November. At COP27, the Scottish Government will showcase Scotland's transition toward renewables and seek to secure trade and development for Scotland, as well as develop global trade and investment partnerships. Under our co-chairmanship of the Under 2 Coalition, the global network of states, regions, provinces and other subnational governments, the Scottish Government will ensure that we act to increase global ambition toward net zero and a just transition. Once again, I'd like to thank the Ground Source Heat Pump Association for all their contributions within the sector to support Scotland's transition to net zero. As I said earlier, now is the time to take action and collectively drive progress within this sector to reach our net zero ambitions. So I hope that my input today has been helpful, and I want to wish you all the best for a very enjoyable and successful conference. Thank you.